My name is Reagan Coleman. I'm 42 years old, and I'm a software engineer at a tech company in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I live with my son Owen, who is 10, in a small apartment on the east side of the city. 2 bedrooms, a living room that tries its best to feel warm, even when the winter presses its face against the windows like it's listening. It isn't fancy, but it's ours. And after everything that happened, ours became the most important word in my life. 2 years ago, I thought I had the kind of family people envy. Not perfect, just steady. A stable job, a decent paycheck, a husband who made the world feel less sharp, and my little boy, who always looked at life like it was a secret worth discovering. Then my husband died. It was supposed to be a simple surgery, routine, the kind of thing you schedule and forget about once you heal. But something went wrong, an unpredictable reaction to anesthesia, a complication nobody saw coming, and within 24 hours, the man I loved was gone. I remember standing in a hospital hallway, the lights too bright, the air too cold, thinking, this cannot be real. But it was. Owen was 8 then, and overnight I became a single mom with a job that didn't pause for grief. People love to say, "You're so strong." They say it like strength is a choice you make at the grocery store. The truth is, I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. I woke up every morning, looked at my child's innocent face, and forced myself to keep breathing. Owen became my reason, my anchor, my heartbeat outside my chest. My work, programming, systems, deadlines, often required travel. Chicago, Detroit, sometimes New York. Trips that lasted 2 to 4 days, sometimes a week. And during those trips, I left Owen with my father, Richard Coleman, 68, my dad, and my sister Sarah, 44, who'd moved back in with him after her divorce 5 years earlier. Sarah had a son, Ben, 2 years older than Owen, loud, confident, always treated like the sun rose just for him. I considered hiring a babysitter. I looked into after-school programs, but the costs stacked up fast, and my schedule shifted constantly, and I kept telling myself the same comforting lie. Family is safest. At first, everything looked fine. Owen sounded normal when I called. "I'm fine, Mom, don't worry." That was always his line, always calm, always trying to make me feel okay. And I believed him, because I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was too ugly to picture. Then came that day in January. Minnesota was locked in one of those deep freezes where the air itself feels like glass. Snow had been falling for days, layering the streets, swallowing sound, turning everything into a quiet that felt wrong. I was out of town for a meeting when, unexpectedly, the project wrapped early. The client approved our beta version ahead of schedule, meaning I could come home a day early. My first feeling wasn't relief. It was joy, pure, bright, almost childish joy. I hadn't seen Owen in 3 days. The thought of surprising him made my chest ache in the best way. So I didn't tell anyone. I wanted that moment. I wanted to see his face. It was around 4 p.m. when I stopped at GameStop, Owen's favorite store, and bought him a Star Wars Lego set he'd been begging for. I'd kept saying, maybe for your birthday. That day, I didn't care about birthdays. I also bought a new Nintendo Switch for Ben, a thank you gift, a peace offering, proof that I appreciated them. By the time I pulled onto my father's street, it was getting dark. Snow was falling again, thick and steady, covering everything in white like nature was trying to erase the world. I parked on the street because the driveway was blocked by a pile of snow that hadn't been cleared. That should have been the first sign. I got out, the cold biting straight through my clothes, and carried the wrapped boxes toward the front door. Out of habit, I pulled out my phone and turned on the camera, planning to record Owen's reaction. The door was unlocked. My stomach tightened. That was unusual for that neighborhood, especially in winter. Break-ins happened. People were careful. I stepped inside and called, "Owen, Dad, Sarah?" Silence. The house felt colder than it should have, like the heat had been turned down to barely survive. The kitchen was dark. The living room looked untouched. No dinner smell. No TV. No voices. I checked Owen's room. Empty. Ben's room. Empty. My excitement drained so fast it felt like someone had pulled a plug from my spine. Then I heard it. A faint scraping sound. Metal against ice. It came from the backyard. I walked toward the glass door, my breath shallow, and looked outside. And my heart almost stopped. Owen was out there, alone, shoveling snow in the wide backyard with a shovel too big for his small body. He was wearing a thin jacket, not the thick winter coat I'd bought him at the start of the season. His face was bright red. His lips were purple. He was shaking so hard it looked like his bones were rattling. The yard was huge, nearly 1,000 square feet. and he'd cleared only a quarter. Snow was still falling, sticking to his hair, his shoulders, the back of his neck. In that kind of cold, it wasn't chores. It was danger. I threw the back door open. "Owen!" He jumped so hard, the shovel clattered to the ground. His whole body stiffened like he'd been caught committing a crime. Then he turned toward me, slowly, like he expected a slap. His eyes were full of fear. Fear and shame. And something in me broke so cleanly I felt it crack. "Mom," he stammered, voice trembling. "Don't be mad at me. I'm almost done." Almost done. Like finishing would save him. Like finishing would make him worthy of warmth. I dropped the gift boxes into the snow without realizing it and ran to him. I pulled him into my arms, and his body was so cold it shocked me through my coat. His hands were red, swollen, cracked. His shoes weren't snow boots, just regular sneakers, soaked through, stiff with ice. I bent down, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Owen, why are you out here? Where is Grandpa? Where is Aunt Sarah?" For a second, he just clung to me, shaking. Then he whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear it. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm used to this. Used to this." The words hit me like a fist. I carried him inside, my arms shaking. Not from the cold, but from the fury and guilt flooding my bloodstream. I wrapped him in the thickest blanket I could find, turned the heat up high, and made him hot chocolate. My hands moved automatically while my mind screamed, "How long has this been happening?" When his color returned slightly, I asked again, carefully, "Where are they?" Owen wouldn't meet my eyes at first, like he was choosing between truth and survival. Finally, he said, "They went to see a movie, with Ben." My mouth went dry. "And you didn't go because?" He swallowed. "I spilled milk on Grandpa's important documents. Grandpa said I had to shovel all the snow before they got home, or I'd be punished." "Punished how?" Owen's voice shrank. He said if I wasn't done, I'd have to sleep in the laundry room tonight. The laundry room was in the basement. Cold, damp, no windows. Just a hard chair. My vision blurred. I grabbed my phone and called Sarah. She answered after a few rings, sounding cautious. "Reagan, what's wrong?" I kept my voice low, controlled. "Where are you, Sarah?" A pause. "What do you mean?" "Where are you and Dad right now?" She rushed out. "We're at home. Owen's playing in his room." Right then, I heard my father's voice in the background. Sharp, confident. "We're home, obviously. The boy had dinner. Nothing's wrong." I stared at Owen wrapped in a blanket like a survivor. And something inside me turned to ice. "I'm standing in this house," I said quietly. "My son was outside shoveling snow in below-freezing weather, alone, and you're lying to me." Silence, then whispering between them, frantic and muffled. Finally, Sarah broke, voice cracking. We stopped by the mall. Ben wanted to see the new movie, so..." "You left my child," I said through clenched teeth, "to shovel snow as punishment." My father cut in like he was proud. "He needs to learn responsibility. You spoil that boy." I felt my hands shake so badly I had to grip the counter. "You have 30 minutes to get back here," I said, every word deadly calm. "Or my next call is to Child Protective Services." I hung up. Owen looked at me with terrified eyes. "Are you mad at me?" I crouched beside him, forcing warmth into my voice. "No, sweetheart, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at them. This is not your fault." Then I opened the fridge. It was nearly empty. A carton of milk almost finished. A few slices of bread. Expired lunch meat. My chest tightened so painfully I could barely breathe. I made him a sandwich anyway, watched him eat like he'd been starving, and that was the moment I stopped thinking and started acting. I called Minnesota CPS, and when they said a social worker would arrive within the hour, I looked down at my son, my shaking, silent, brave little boy, and I realized something with terrifying clarity. Whatever happened next, my family would never be the same. Because I was done pretending love could excuse cruelty. And outside, the snow kept falling, like the world didn't care what it covered. The night I took Owen out of my father's house, I didn't feel victorious. I felt like someone had reached inside my chest and scraped my heart raw. Owen sat in the back seat, still wrapped in that thick blanket, holding his hot chocolate with both hands, like it was the only warm thing left in the world. His eyes kept drifting to the window, not really looking at anything, just watching the snow blur past, like he was afraid it might follow us. I drove with my jaw clenched so tight it ached, because I kept hearing his whisper in my head, "I'm used to this." And with every mile, the truth grew heavier. This wasn't one bad night. This was a pattern. Something that had been happening right under my nose, while I was out there, trusting, working, surviving, thinking I was doing the best I could. When we got back to our apartment, I didn't even bother taking off my coat. I carried Owen inside like he was still 9, even though he was 10 now and too big for it. I didn't care. I needed to feel the weight of him, to prove he was here, safe, real. I set him down on this couch and knelt in front of him. "Owen," I said softly, "I need you to tell me something. And I promise, you're not in trouble, not for any of it." His fingers tightened around the mug. He didn't answer. He just looked at me with that careful expression kids get when they're trying to guess which version of the adult they're going to get today. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Has Aunt Sarah ever made you do that before? Shovel snow, stay in the laundry room, go without dinner? His face went still, and I watched him do something that shattered me more than any scream could have. He tried to smile, a tiny fake smile, like he thought that would protect me. "I don't know," he said quickly. "It's fine, Mom." No, that wasn't Owen talking. That was fear. I leaned closer, keeping my voice gentle. "Sweetheart, I already know it wasn't fine. I saw you. I saw your hands, your shoes, the way you flinched when I said your name." His eyes dropped to his lap. Then, in a voice so small it barely existed, he said, "If I told you, Grandpa said you'd get angry, and Aunt Sarah said you were doing important work, and you already lost Dad." His lower lip trembled. "I didn't want to make you sadder." I closed my eyes because if I didn't, I knew I'd start crying, and I was terrified my tears would make him feel like he'd done something wrong. I took his cold hands in mine and pressed my forehead to his knuckles. "I am the adult," I whispered. "I am supposed to protect you. You don't have to protect me." He made a sound, half sob, half hiccup, and leaned forward into my arms like he'd been holding his breath for months. I stayed like that with him until his breathing slowed, until his body stopped bracing like a storm could hit at any second. And when he finally fell asleep in my bed, because I refused to let him sleep alone that night, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand, staring at the CPS number I'd already called, and realized something else. This wasn't just about anger. This was about evidence. Because people like my father didn't break. They didn't confess. They didn't suddenly grow a conscience. They denied. They rewrote reality. They made you feel crazy for believing your own eyes. So I made a folder. I labeled it Owen. And I started documenting everything. Photos of his cracked hands, his swollen fingers, the thin jacket, the sneakers that were still damp when I set them by the heater. I saved the video from my phone, the one I had accidentally recorded when I thought I was capturing a sweet surprise. Instead, it captured my child shoveling snow like he was being punished for existing. And then I listened to the call recording. Sarah lying. My father's voice cold as a locked door. He needs to learn responsibility. That audio was going to matter. Because that was the difference between misunderstanding and truth. The next morning, I emailed my boss requesting extended leave. I didn't tell her the whole story, just enough. Family emergency, immediate child safety issue, I need 2 weeks. My company surprised me in the best way possible. My boss replied within minutes, "Take what you need, your job will be here." For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I spent those days like I was building a wall around Owen's life. We ate breakfast together. We watched his favorite movies. We played board games. We took slow walks when the weather allowed. But even in those quiet moments, I started noticing things I'd missed before. The way Owen startled when the neighbor's door slammed. The way he asked permission to eat snacks that were already his. The way he flinched when he spilled a little juice, eyes widening like he expected punishment. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. And that was the worst part. Because subtle trauma is easy to ignore unless you know what you're looking for. On day 3, I called a child psychologist and got Owen scheduled as soon as possible. On day 4, I got myself scheduled too. Because the truth was, I could feel the guilt turning toxic. It wasn't enough to protect him now. I had to learn how to forgive myself enough to keep functioning. A week after the incident, my phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. I answered and immediately recognized the calm, professional tone. "Ms. Coleman, this is Melissa Taylor from Minnesota Child Protective Services." My heartbeat sped up. "Yes," I said. "Is Owen okay? Did you find anything?" There was a pause, just long enough to scare me. Then Melissa spoke carefully. "After reviewing the evidence you provided and the interview with Owen, we have opened an official investigation file, and due to the nature of what was described, we are transferring the case to the Minneapolis Police Department." My stomach dropped. Police meant this wasn't being treated like family disagreement. It meant the system believed my child had been endangered. Melissa continued, "We contacted your father and your sister. They denied all allegations. They said Owen exaggerated. They claimed it was harmless discipline." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. Of course they did. They couldn't admit what they were, not even to themselves. Thank you, I said, my voice tight. Thank you for believing him. Melissa's tone softened slightly. Ms. Coleman, you did the right thing. We will monitor this closely. You will be contacted within the next few days. When the call ended, I stared at the wall for a long moment. Then I walked into the living room and sat beside Owen. He was drawing, something with stick figures, a house, and a big sun in the corner, his little attempt at safety. He glanced up at me, cautious. Is it bad? I swallowed hard. It's serious, but you're safe, and I'm here. He nodded, like he was trying to believe me. 2 days later, detectives came to my apartment. 2 of them, 1 man, 1 woman. They were polite, professional, and they didn't treat me like I was overreacting. That alone made me want to cry. They reviewed my evidence, the video, the photos, the call recording. They asked questions. They wrote everything down. Then the female detective, Detective Kelly Ramirez, asked if she could speak to Owen privately. My entire body tensed, not because I didn't trust her, because asking Owen to relive it felt like dragging him back into the snow. Kelly saw my hesitation. We'll be gentle, she promised, and we can stop any time. Owen looked at me, panicked. I squeezed his hand. You're in control, okay? If you want to stop, you stop. He took a breath like he was gathering courage from somewhere inside his ribs and nodded. The interview lasted 20 minutes. I waited in the kitchen with the other detective, staring at the countertop like if I looked anywhere else, I'd fall apart. When Kelly finally came out, her face was controlled, but her eyes were different. She approached me and said quietly, "We have sufficient grounds to proceed with a criminal investigation. We're contacting the county prosecutor's office." My knees went weak. Criminal. That word sounded like a cliff edge. Part of me felt relief, like finally someone was taking this seriously. But another part of me felt sick, because my father was my father, and Sarah was my sister. And now they were being discussed like criminals. I nodded slowly. I'll cooperate with whatever you need. Kelly's voice softened. Your priority is Owen's safety. That's what matters most. When they left, Owen climbed onto the couch beside me and leaned his head on my shoulder, something he hadn't done in months. He whispered, Mom, will Grandpa and Aunt Sarah go to jail? I closed my eyes and kissed the top of his head. I don't know, I said honestly. That's up to the court. But whatever happens, you are never going back there. Not ever. His breath shuddered, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of the war I had started. Because I wasn't just cutting ties. I was pulling my son out of the grip of people who believed they owned him, just because they shared our blood. And deep down, I knew my father wouldn't forgive me for that. Not in a million winters. The days after the detective's visit felt unreal, like I was living inside a glass house where everything looked normal from the outside, but one wrong breath could shatter it. Owen went to therapy twice a week. I sat in the waiting room, pretending to scroll on my phone while listening to the muffled sounds of his voice through the door. Every laugh, every pause, every moment of silence felt loaded with meaning. Sometimes he came out lighter, sometimes quieter. Every time I told myself the same thing. This is the price of truth, and truth is still better than silence. Then my phone rang again. This time it was Melissa from CPS. Ms. Coleman, she said gently, I wanted to inform you of next steps. Based on the investigation, the file has officially been transferred to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. My grip tightened on the phone. That means charges? I asked. Yes, she replied. Your father, Richard Coleman, and your sister, Sarah Marshall, are being charged with child endangerment and abandonment. The words landed heavy, not because I didn't expect them, but because hearing them out loud made it permanent. Melissa continued, Family Court has also issued a ruling. You've been granted full legal and physical custody of Owen. Your father and sister are prohibited from contacting him in any form for the next 2 years. I sank into the chair. For the first time since that night in the snow, I let myself cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears of relief. Owen was protected. Legally, officially, permanently, for now. But relief didn't erase fear, because people like my father didn't accept consequences quietly. 2 days later, my phone lit up with a familiar name. Dad. I stared at it, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to scream. I answered anyway. Hello? He didn't waste time. My lawyer said you refused the settlement. My jaw tightened. That's right. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. Do you understand what you're doing to this family? Family. That word again. What about what you did to my son? I asked, voice steady but cold. He scoffed. You're exaggerating. He was disciplined. Kids need structure. You've always been too soft. Soft. I looked across the room at Owen, carefully lining up his colored pencils in perfect rows, terrified of making a mess. You left a 10-year-old alone in sub-zero temperatures, I said. You threatened him with isolation and hunger. That's not discipline, that's abuse. Silence stretched. Then his voice dropped, turning sharp and accusing. I raised you, I paid for your education, and this is how you repay me? There it was. The debt. The unspoken contract he thought I owed him. I exhaled slowly. This isn't about you and me. This is about Owen. He laughed bitterly. Justice? You think this is justice? Sarah could lose her job. I could go to prison. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Did you think about that? I asked quietly, when you made him shovel snow until his hands cracked. Another long silence. Then, colder than before, you'll regret this, Reagan. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from certainty. A week later, my lawyer Jordan called. Reagan, he said carefully, your father and sister have pleaded not guilty. I closed my eyes. Of course they had. They're claiming it was a misunderstanding, Jordan continued. They're suggesting Owen exaggerated events. And, this part's important, they're hinting that your grief after your husband's death may have affected your judgment. My chest burned. They're blaming me, I whispered. Yes, Jordan said gently, which is why evidence matters. And in this case, we have a lot. Still, the thought of a trial made my stomach twist. Owen testifying, facing them again, reliving everything. I couldn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m., I found Owen sitting up in bed, hugging his pillow. They're mad at you, he said quietly, because of me. I climbed in beside him and wrapped my arms around his shaking shoulders. No, I said firmly. They're mad because they got caught. 3 weeks before the scheduled trial, Jordan called again. This time his voice was different. Surprised. Reagan, he said, we just received notice. Your father and Sarah want to change their plea. I sat down hard. Change it to what? To guilty. My heart skipped. What? I whispered. Jordan explained. The prosecution received new evidence. A neighbor provided security footage from the past year. My breath caught. The footage shows Owen being left outside alone, multiple times. Different weather, different days. A pattern. Not a mistake. Not discipline. Systematic abuse. I felt sick. Part of me wanted to throw up. Part of me wanted to scream. They know they can't win, Jordan continued. A trial would only make things worse. This way, Owen won't have to testify. That was the part that mattered most. When I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at nothing. Owen wouldn't have to face them. But the truth was bigger than I'd known. And suddenly, the weight of it all pressed down on me at once. Later that evening, Owen sat beside me on the couch. Mom, he asked softly, does this mean it's over? I looked at him, really looked. At the way his shoulders still tensed when he asked questions. At the way he waited for permission to relax. It means they can't hurt you anymore, I said, and they won't. He leaned into me, resting his head on my shoulder. For the first time in months, he fell asleep there. And as I held him, I realized something painful and freeing all at once. They could plead guilty. They could accept punishment. But they would never get back what they lost. Not my trust. Not my son. Not the version of family they destroyed with their own hands. And I was done trying to save it. Stop. Continue, part 4. The price of family. The closer we got to sentencing, the quieter my life became. Not calmer, quieter. Like the world was holding its breath. Richard and Sarah had officially changed their pleas to guilty. There would be no trial, no courtroom showdown, no dramatic confessions under fluorescent lights. Just consequences. Jordan explained the sentencing range to me over the phone, his voice careful, neutral, trained. Your father could face 6 months to a year in prison, followed by probation. Sarah's likely looking at a suspended sentence, mandatory parenting classes, anger management, and community service. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat there, phone in my lap, staring at the wall. This was the moment people imagine as justice. But justice didn't feel triumphant. It felt heavy. Owen sensed it. Kids always do. One night, while we were brushing our teeth side by side, he glanced at me in the mirror and asked, Mom, are they still mad at us? The question landed like a bruise. I turned off the faucet and crouched to his level. They might be, but that doesn't mean they're right. He nodded slowly, absorbing it the way children do, quietly, deeply. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. Will Grandpa go to jail? I didn't lie. I don't know, I said. That's up to the judge. His shoulders drooped, and for a second I saw the boy he used to be, the one who believed adults were always safe. Is it my fault? He whispered. Something inside me snapped. No, I said firmly, taking his face in my hands. Listen to me. What happened is never the child's fault. Ever. You didn't cause this. You survived it. He swallowed hard, then wrapped his arms around my neck and held on like he was afraid I might disappear. That night, After he fell asleep, I sat alone in the dark living room and let myself think about something I'd been avoiding. The victim impact statement. Jordan had told me I had the right to read one at sentencing, to stand up and explain, on record, what their actions had done to my son. Part of me wanted them to hear it, to be forced to listen. But another part of me, maybe the stronger part, didn't want to give them one more piece of us. While I was still deciding, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Reagan, this is Aunt Linda. Your dad is heartbroken. He didn't mean for things to go this far. Family should forgive. Please think about what you're doing. I stared at the screen. Then another message came in. Sarah is terrified. CPS involvement could destroy her career. Owen is fine now. Isn't that enough? My chest tightened. They still didn't get it. To them, Owen's safety was a result. To me, it was the requirement. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail. My father's voice. Hoarse, controlled, manipulative in a way only parents can be. Reagan, I know you're angry, but we're family. We handle things privately. Don't let outsiders decide our fate. I didn't delete it right away. I played it again and again. Then I heard something from the hallway. Owen, standing there in his pajamas, frozen. How long were you listening? I asked quietly. He shrugged, eyes down. Long enough. His hands were shaking. Did I do something wrong? He asked. That was it. That was the moment the debate inside me ended. I knelt in front of him and took his trembling hands in mine. No, I said softly, but they did, and I won't let them scare you ever again. I blocked the number. Blocked Aunt Linda. Blocked everyone who thought blood was a free pass to hurt a child. On the day of sentencing, I made my decision. I didn't go. I didn't read a statement. I stayed home with Owen. We made pancakes. We laughed when the first batch burned. We watched a silly movie and built a lopsided Lego spaceship that kept falling apart. While a judge decided their punishment, I chose something else. Peace. Jordan called later that afternoon. It's done, he said. I closed my eyes. Okay. They accepted full responsibility. The judge emphasized the severity of endangering a child. No contact order remains in effect. I thanked him and hung up. Owen was on the floor, lining up his toy cars. Is it over? He asked. I sat beside him and pulled him into my arms. It's over for us, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. 9 months passed. Not quickly, not easily, but steadily, like learning to walk again after a fall that cracked bone and pride at the same time. Owen and I moved to a larger apartment in a quieter neighborhood, one with better lighting, thicker walls, and a playground that stayed busy until dusk. I let Owen pick the color of his room. He chose a soft blue, not too dark, not too bright. He needed balance. So did I. I rearranged my work life the way I'd once rearranged grief. My promotion came with full remote flexibility, and for the first time in years, I stopped measuring my worth by how much time I spent away from home. Mornings became hours. Breakfast wasn't rushed. Evenings weren't a countdown to exhaustion. Owen kept going to therapy. The nightmares didn't vanish overnight, but they loosened their grip. The bedwetting stopped. The flinching faded. He stopped apologizing for existing. One afternoon, his therapist smiled gently and said, "He's starting to feel safe in his body again." I sat in my car afterward and cried, not from pain this time, but from gratitude so deep it hurt. Owen joined a youth soccer team. The first practice, he hovered at the edge of the field, uncertain. Then one of the kids waved him over, handed him a ball, and just like that, he was running, laughing, falling, getting back up without fear. I watched from the sidelines, hands pressed together, thinking, this is what childhood is supposed to look like. I also stayed in therapy, because while Owen was healing from what happened to him, I was healing from what I missed, from the warning signs I explained away, from the blind faith I placed in blood ties just because they shared my last name. My therapist said something once that stayed with me. Guilt is what we feel when we believe we should have known better. Growth is what happens when we learn and refuse to repeat it. I chose growth. I learned, slowly, that protecting my child didn't make me heartless. It made me a parent. I know what happened to my father. He served 6 months and was released early due to health reasons and good behavior. I know what happened to Sarah, too. Her sentence followed her everywhere: parenting classes, mandatory counseling, community service, and the quiet weight of people knowing what she'd done. They never contacted us again, and I never reached out. Not because I hated them, but because some wounds don't heal with forgiveness. They heal with distance. Owen asked once, a long time later, "Do you miss them?" I thought carefully before answering. "I miss who I thought they were," I said, "but I don't miss what they did." He nodded, satisfied. That was enough. Now when I tuck Owen in at night, he doesn't ask if I'm mad. He asks what we're doing tomorrow. He asks if we can bake cookies on Saturday. He asks if he can invite a friend over. Normal questions. Safe questions. And sometimes, when the apartment is quiet and the snow falls outside, soft, harmless, beautiful, I think about that night. About the shovel, the thin jacket. The moment I realized love without protection is just a story we tell ourselves. I lost my father. I lost my sister. But I kept my son. And I kept my integrity. If you're listening to this and wondering what you would do in my place, if you should stay silent to keep the peace, or speak up to protect a child, I'll tell you this. Peace built on fear is not peace. And family that demands your child's suffering is not family. Owen is laughing in the next room as I finish this. And that sound? That's everything.